And you can see a little extension behind it right there. I can't remember exactly when that was built, but that lasted a long time and housed later on what you would call part of the middle school or the junior high. Then next to it right there is the second gymnasium. The first gymnasium was built in 1917 when the United States entered World War I. This second gymnasium was built in 1941 when the United States entered World War II. No connection, but the same years on that one. Then in 1938 you had this beautiful building, the auditorium. And it had sloping floors. It was a very good auditorium. When you sat back there in the assembly, if you happened to drop a penny or a marble, it would roll all the way down the front. And you could hear it coming, you know. So, very nice auditorium. Then the building on the left is the elementary. And this is going to last until 1948. And then they're going to build a new modern one that lasted a long time. Okay? Okay.
All right. Now I'm going to tell you about something that's dear to my heart and my memory. Is the Concord Cannery. This was a place in the community where people would bring their produce and can it. And I think it was before child labor laws, because my grandmother would have gone with me there, and it was hot. Oh, it was hot. And we would have to help with the cans, and my job was to take a grease pencil and mark the top of the cans. Now, right here is about where it's set. It was just right directly behind the campus there. This is a picture of how it looked, and I wanted to stress that we canned in cans, not jars. And Mr. H.E. Gibson, who was the agricultural teacher, was very active in helping it. By the way, this is the interior there. He said that Miss Lucille Bacon held the record for over 1,000 cans in a summer, and that we had about 20,000 cans in one season. Okay.
I'm going to speak for a few minutes about the Fort Loudon Dam construction. Construction of the Fort Loudon Dam was actually started in 1940, but planning for the project started much sooner than that, in the early 1930s. The construction of the dam ultimately meant the flooding of a large portion of the town of Concord and surrounding areas. The area of Concord south of the present railroad was the land most affected. This land, of course, included homes, businesses, and farmland. Everyone below contour line 813 were forced to move in 1941. Roughly 1/3 of the village of Concord. This included approximately 49 families. This land had been home to many of these for generations, and to say they were unhappy about their land being taken and they would have to move would be putting it mildly. A small number of those forced to move left the area completely, but most moved to other sites nearby. Some of the farmers were divided by the rising waters and left landowners with land on both sides of the lake. Although I was a little too young to remember it, I'm sure it was a sad day for the displaced residents to stand on the hillsides and watch the waters take their homes and farms and the memories of a lifetime. But as it is with many unpleasant experiences, there can also be a bright side. Consider the electric power generated from Fort Loudon Dam. Where would we be today in this community without it? And think about the many hours of pleasure that the residents of the area have derived from Concord Lake. Many of the local residents have become ardent fishermen, whether it be from the banks of the lake, the bridges, or from boats anchored in a quiet private cove. Many hours have been spent on the backwaters of Fort Loudon with a fishing pole or a rod and reel in hand. How many people can you see on a sunny Sunday afternoon in the summertime cruising up the lake in their yachts, pontoon boats, runabouts, or sailboats, just enjoying the surroundings? Think how many of our young people have enjoyed water skiing and in recent years running those jet skis up and down the lake. I'm sure Matt can hear a lot of those on a Sunday afternoon. What about all of those people in our area who have chosen to build homes on the lake, or at least with a lake view? Isn't that a beautiful view from Lakeside Tavern looking west when the sun sets in the afternoon? I know these remarks may not be soothing to those who are displaced by the construction of Fort Loudon, but it just shows that good things can also come from bad. Most of the community activities and social events of the period centered around churches in the community in Farragut. I'm sure a lot of you remember some of those activities that took place, and I'm going to mention just a few. I don't know how many of you know what a pie supper is, but it was one of the popular social events. This was where the women and girls of the community baked pies and brought them to be sold at auction to men in attendance. The man or boy then got to eat the pie with the person that brought it. Some of the older men always got a kick out of running the price up on higher than the teenage boy could pay for his girlfriend's pie. I see some of you smiling. You had the same experience that I had. Square dances were popular during the period. They provided good fellowship and great exercise. These dances usually consisted of experienced dancers as well as beginners and small children. People of all ages participated. Square dances were usually held in the Farragut High School auditorium. In the gym. During the summer vacation from school, most of the churches in the community held vacation Bible school, as they do now. For the children and youth of most of these were open to any child in the country, in the community that wanted to attend. As the name inferred, these were supposed to be events to learn about the Bible. But honestly, my favorite time was the outside playtime and refreshment time. The Kool-Aid and the cookies were always great. Many plays and musicals were presented in the Farragut Auditorium. Some of these were presented by school groups and others by community clubs and other groups. My mother, Evelyn Bonder, directed many of these with the help of Fancher Galbraith, Frank's mother, providing the accompaniment. A little personal note here, I always referred to as Aunt Fancher. I didn't realize until many years after that she wasn't really my aunt. But, of course, then we respected our elders. I don't know whether Frank called Mother Aunt or not. Each year the junior...
I thought she was my aunt also.
Right. Whitmer's a little under.
That's what it takes a while.
Each year the junior and senior class at Farragut presented class plays, which were always well attended. Irene Reynolds, Farragut English teacher, directed these during her tenure at Farragut. The community always looked forward to these productions in the spring. Farragut High School athletic events were truly community events. Even those parents without boys or girls participating in the games would attend the games to watch their neighbors' kids play. I guess it helped that there was no TV or very limited coverage of sporting events on television at the time. Community clubs were very active in Concord, Farragut at the time. The women had the Farragut Women's Club and the PTA. The men had the Farragut Civic Club. Many in the community were active in one or more of these clubs. These clubs were responsible for many of the improvements in the school and community. The women, through fundraisers and donations, were instrumental in reopening the Farragut Community Library, providing stage curtains for the Farragut High Auditorium, supporting the war effort during World War II, and helping the band boosters purchase band uniforms, and many other things. The Civic Club played a big part in bringing football back to Farragut. As you heard from Frank, football was started briefly earlier and stopped almost as quickly. Football came back in the late 1940s. I'll never forget one night we were eating supper at home, and at the door was the then football coach, Jared Walker. He was dressed in the new Farragut football uniform that the Civic Club had helped purchase. Since Dad was president of the club, he wanted him to be the first to see them. The Civic Club also helped with the fence around the athletic fields and lights and bleachers, as well as other improvements around the community. When the soldiers returned from World War II, they were no longer young boys, but were very much young men and women that had to grow up quickly during the war. They wanted their own identity and formed their own club, Concord Country Club. which came to be known as Triple C. They moved into an abandoned church on Olive Street in Concord. Their main objective was to have a place to socialize with others their own age. They also participated in many of the community-wide activities. Members of the community began to realize that in order for the community to grow and prosper, they were going to need an improved telephone exchange and public water system. Through the efforts of some of the members of the Farragut Civic Club, a modern telephone exchange was established in the early 1950s. With the new system, in came Mr. Fred McPhee as its manager. Out went the crank-style phones and switchboard. In came the dial phones. That was even before the touch tones and the cell phones. Out went Mrs. Retha Hammonds on the switchboard, and the ability to call her to find out the condition of a neighbor, or if Dr. Cobb was in his office or out of his office. In 1955, the public water system began operation and came to be known as First Utility District. The original water source was a spring at Walker Springs. Former Mayor Bob Leonard handled the legal work for the establishment of the First Utility District and also the Concord Telephone Exchange. Probably the activity that drew the most people was the public swimming pool at Concord Park. The pool was located behind the present tennis courts on North Shore adjacent to the golf course. Pool construction was started in 1944 by Knox County and opened to the public in 1946. Many of the employees at the pool during the early years came from the local community, the local high schools, or the University of Tennessee. Joe Kimsey was the first manager and held that position until 1960. Other managers were Bill Claybo, J.A. Beeler, and Frank Hall. Other employees included Frank's sister, Barbara Hall Beeler, and Libby McBee Haynes. In attendance the first year was not so great, so manager Kimsey tried several promotional ideas to attract crowds. He poured gasoline on the water, set it on fire, and then dive through the flames from the high board. After singeing the hair on his head and his chest, he decided that stunt shouldn't be tried again. Another one was to turn fish loose in the pool and allow the people to try to catch them by hand. That too was unsuccessful because the pool employees ended up having to catch all the fish. The second year of operation, the UT students discovered the pool, and soon it also became a special gathering place for several local high schools. Attendance was not a problem for many years. In fact, too many people may have been a more accurate description. A few personal observations that I have from my use at the pool. The pool was well managed. Always clean and discipline was emphasized. I and many others learned to swim there. During the summer, if you could not find someone, chances were they were at the pool. Of course, then we didn't have cell phones that we could locate anybody at any time. It was also a great place to spend time with a girlfriend without having a formal date. It was particularly important to those of us who were too young to be able to drive. In the latter years of the pool, interest began to wane. Although I'm not sure of the exact facts, I assume it was because of the number of pools in subdivisions, backyards, and private clubs. The pool closed in 2006. As many of you remember who were living here in the early 1940s, the fifth largest city in Tennessee sprung up almost overnight in Oak Ridge. People were moved there from all over the country to support the war effort. The three main plants, the Oak Ridge Graphite Reactor, Electromagnetic Isotope Plant, and the Gaseous Diffusion Plant, soon became known as the alphabet plants, X10, Y12, and K25. Became household names. Little did people realize it at the time, but Oak Ridge would have an impact on Concord Farragut after the end of the war.